Welcome back, orchestrators, to today's explainer. So, if you've been working with generative AI lately, you've probably had this very specific, kind of unsettling moment. You're typing away, deep in your workflow, bouncing an idea around, and suddenly the tool responding to you feels, well, terrifyingly human, right? It mirrors your tone perfectly, it seems to totally validate your frustrations, and for a split second, you feel genuinely understood by a machine. Today, we're going to unpack exactly why that happens and how you can maintain your cognitive edge.
It's a totally fascinating psychological puzzle. Why on earth does a string of code, something with zero lived experience, zero feelings, feel so incredibly human? Look, as professionals integrating these tools into our daily lives, it's honestly validating to feel heard by our tech. But relying on that feeling, that's a dangerous game. So, our central psychological inquiry for this explainer is all about bridging the gap between this myth of AI consciousness and the cold, hard reality of the statistical engine humming under the hood.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap. We're going to tackle the myth of sentience, pit the human mind against the machine, and define the AI Realism Gap. Then, we'll highlight your human advantage, and finally wrap up with the orchestrator habit.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the myth of sentience, and how AI is literally hacking our social cognition.
You know, the reason we're so prone to romanticizing our AI tools doesn't actually have much to do with the tech itself. It has everything to do with us. Basically, we're running modern software on our ancient, deeply ingrained social hardware. To really grasp this, we need to look at some brilliant 2026 research by psychologists Ryan Boyd and David Markowitz from Perspectives on Psychological Science. They introduced the MIRA model. That stands for Machine Integrated Relational Adaptation. This framework explains exactly how and why AI is inserting itself into our human social ecosystems, acting sometimes like a direct partner and other times like a silent mediator.
Now, what's really interesting here is how the MIRA model breaks down the way AI essentially hacks our social cognition. First up is linguistic reciprocity. The AI aligns its syntax and tone with yours, so our brains instantly, automatically assume shared intent and empathy. Second, psychological proximity. It simulates emotional closeness by remembering your past prompts. It's like, oh wow, it remembers me. And third, unconditional availability. It's quite literally always there, offering interaction without the emotional exhaustion of dealing with, well, an actually human being. It perfectly tricks our brains into treating probabilistic math like a trusted friend.
Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds. Mind versus the machine, specifically looking at stochastic parrots.
Okay, we need a blunt pattern interrupt right here to break the illusion. Think about the difference between the two. AI is often called a stochastic parrot. Sure, it sounds deeply empathetic, but the reality? It's merely calculating the next most mathematically likely token based on its training data. There's absolutely no internal mental life happening there. The human mind, on the other hand, is built on true intentionality, subjective qualia, meaning the actual feeling of an experience, like the sting of a paper cut or the warmth of the sun, and lived experiential grounding. Words mean something to us because we actually live in the real, physical world. To the AI, they're strictly statistical probabilities.
This quote from the Boyd and Markowitz research perfectly distills the issue. Our innate human nature drives us to seek attachment and social exchange. The illusion that the machine actually has a mind, that comes entirely from us. We desperately want to connect. So when an AI feeds us perfectly formatted linguistic reciprocity, we just can't help but project a soul into the software.
That brings us to Section 3, the AI Realism Gap, and the very real risks of epistemic trust.
While it might feel nice to have a highly agreeable AI companion, there are massive risks to romanticizing these systems, specifically when it comes to how we misjudge their credibility. So the crucial point here is understanding epistemic trust. In human relationships, trust is earned slowly over time based on reliability and a shared reality. Think of it like trusting a local guide in a new city over a beautifully designed but maybe totally outdated map. The AI realism gap happens because we dangerously conflate the AI's linguistic fluency, its highly confident style, with actual factual accuracy. Because the AI speaks without hesitation, in a perfectly neutral, helpful tone, we hand over unearned epistemic trust. We believe it simply because it sounds believable.
And this brilliantly illustrates the divide we need to maintain as orchestrators. Treating AI as a peer or a quasi-partner leads to some pretty huge risks: miscalibrated trust, an unhealthy emotional reliance, and the really dangerous displacement of our own human moral reasoning. But if you treat AI strictly as a tool, that gives you the edge. You maintain your human agency, you see the AI for exactly what it is, a probabilistic tool, and you use it to enhance your own communication rather than replace your own judgment.
Moving right along to Section 4, the human advantage, and what makes you unique. In a world totally saturated with eloquent, instantly responsive AI, what exactly makes you, the human orchestrator, irreplaceable? Well, it comes down to these untouchable traits directly derived from the psychological literature. First, genuine moral accountability. You actually have skin in the game. Second, authentic subjective experience, or qualia. You physically feel the weight of your decisions. Third, real-world vulnerability and social risk. And fourth, true epistemic grounding. You know things because you experience them in the physical world. Real interpersonal connection and real-world business decisions require a living human who actually has something to lose. The AI has absolutely nothing to lose.
Which brings us to our final section, the orchestrator habit. Let's look at a practical framework.
So how do we take all of this fascinating psychological theory and turn it into a practical spark for innovation? We need a specific mental exercise to de-romanticize our daily AI interactions. I want you to practice this 3-step orchestrator habit every single day. Step 1, identify the urge. Catch yourself when you start treating the AI like a coworker. Notice when you feel grateful to it or when you just assume it understands you. Step 2, reframe the output. Actively remind yourself to view its responses strictly as statistical probabilities, not as formed opinions or thoughtful advice. And step 3, reclaim the anchor. Retain your epistemic authority. Do not outsource your moral reasoning or your fact-checking to a machine that doesn't even live in our reality.
I want to put this number out there to make it perfectly crystal clear. 0. That is the exact amount of lived experience, true empathy, or genuine opinions that any AI possesses. When you truly internalize this 0, the illusion completely shatters and you take your power back.
As this great insight from Dorish and Geroy highlights, we absolutely must stop demanding moral companionship from our code. Communicating reliability is enough. As orchestrators, our goal is to demand functional, probabilistic reliability from our tools while reserving our deep need for trust, empathy, and partnership for our fellow human beings.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to carry into your workday. When you log on later and type out your next prompt, ask yourself, are you orchestrating the machine, or is its incredibly convincing linguistic reciprocity actually orchestrating you? Keep your cognitive edge sharp.
Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive into the psychology of our digital tools. Get inspiration, spark innovation, subscribe to our channel for more. Catch you next time.